The first step is going to be getting core activation so that you can stabilize your spine. So before we even think about adding any load to the spine, we need to make sure we can actually control it. Because if we can't control it in simple movements that we're all doing already, then how are we going to do it when we start adding load and upping the stakes? Movements like those in the recently released Core 5 for Spine Health video, dead bug, marching bridge, squat, hip hinge and step up are great real world movements, particularly the latter three, that can be used with load later on, that we need to master, and we need to master them quickly. When we're doing all of these movements, know that if you experience pain when you're doing them, it's because you're not controlling your spine. For example, as you go through that squatting motion, you're tucking your bum under and ouch, that hurts. Why? Because you're pressing down on the disc in an uneven way. We're straining that very disc by adding flexion, forward bending through that lumbar spine. This is incorrect. We should not be doing this. So we take a step back, reevaluate and get it right. For some of you guys, this might take a couple of goes. For others, it might take a couple of weeks. And for some of you, it will take a little bit longer than that because you're starting from a lower base of competence. It's not so much about the pain you're in. It's more about the competence you had beforehand and the competence you have right now. And all we can do is practice this safely and figure out what variation of these exercises we can do. A squat could be a squat down to a chair, or it could be a squat down to a stool, or it could be a very, very shallow squat, hardly bending our knees with our bum just touching the kitchen table. It's all about finding where you can do it without getting aggravation and start that process of building this spine stability. So step number 2 is going to really focus on the latter 3 of those, and that's going to be adding spinal loading. That is using weights, using resistance bands. Now we suggest you add resistance bands first because they have this variable resistance in that they are strongest or most difficult at the top when you are safest, and they slightly reduce as we go down into the lower positions of the squat, the hip hinge and the step up, making it a little bit easier, a little bit more forgiving if you do make errors. Again, in this point, we're looking to make sure we are not having any choreographic errors, we're not experiencing any pain, and we haven't got any problems whilst we're adding a little bit of load with just the ergonomics of carrying the weight or band that we're using. The last part is really the long part, and that is the progressive work. And arguably, this never finishes. It is about progressively increasing the loads that we're doing. Setting yourselves targets, setting yourself goals, looking at it in the context of your daily life. What kind of levels should you get to? And primarily using the squat and or the hip hinge as your mechanism for, with a neutral spine, that's the nice lordosis, holding it steady, exposing that spine to load. This is going to be the safest way for you to start to steadily rebuild strength and stability in those very bulging discs themselves. Understanding that you'll often drastically underestimate what can be achieved with a year of hard work in this direction. And the great thing is, for much of this process, you'll actually be in a position where you're not struggling with that much pain on a daily basis. The further on you get, the easier it gets, but often the greater the temptation to start doing other things. And so make sure you don't make that mistake. When the going gets good, you get going off doing other bits and pieces that are more interesting than the stuff that got you to the point at which you can consider doing those other hobbies and practices again.